Some say in the weird and wacky world that is the one that F's. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. And yet again, on today, the 17th of the 10th, as at 3 minutes past 8, we get more evidence of that because Red Bull have been accused by the other 9 teams of cheating yet again, as if we didn't get enough of that with all the talk, steer, inertia valve, fiddle brake accusations earlier on in the year. Lest we forget that circa Miami, some say that Red Bull Racing were using themselves a fiddle brake with a view to facilitate oversteer, just like McLaren did back in the day, Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard settings. Why? Because in this era, the ground effect era, indeed you lose a lot of lap time via understeer around slow minimum speed turns. Please see as an example a Rascas. And in order to do that, in order to nullify for that, if you had yourself a cheeky fiddle brake that would brake excessively the outside tyre or the inside tyre even with a view to get the car turned in more, then you nullify for that. No. And that would make sense. That's why the McLaren had themselves an extra pedal, so-called fiddle brake back in the day. Now in the ground effect era, trying to run your car super low to the ground again, minimum speed turns a la Rascas. This sort of thing would help, but now we get ourselves something different. And this is all rumour, Will. I preface everything with this. Not all F1 publications are created equally now. Some are created more equal than others. It gets techie. I'm going to cite a couple for you. Autosport, Eric Van Haren of the Telegraph, and so too Marcuse of the Race, and they all have similar but different things to say. Nuance here is really important. Look, here's what's happened per Jonathan Noble and Matt Summerfield of the of Autosport, why the FIA's front bib trick clampdown is not going to stop team intrigue. And lest we forget, look, F1 is a piranha's tank. Again, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Please see as a case in point even the double diffuser that Ross Brawn leveraged so well in 2009 to get himself a World Drivers' Championship and Jenson Button. Please see X-Wing. Please see the bloody splitters or the what do you call them? The skirts that Lotus used back in the day. Do you know what I mean? If you're not cheating, you're not trying. This has been a common denominator. Indeed, one of the oldest stories in F1 history that these guys and girls are always pushing the boundaries. Autosport, though, as at today, writes the FIA may be taking action against a new trick to adjust bib clearance, but it may not be enough. Why? It will be tough to find conclusive evidence that it was ever used in parc fermé conditions. And of course, if you're going to prosecute this, then you need evidence. You're going to punish a team, X team, whether that's the Bulls that are red or a McLaren, then you need concrete evidence, not only that it was there, but it was used. Now, as far as its advantages, and there will be advantages, this allows a team, or would allow a team hypothetically, again, allegedly, settings, it would allow a team to optimize for both their race and qualifying trim if indeed they could tinker with the ride heights between quali and the race, notwithstanding parc fermé regulations outlawing that. It gets techie, ladies and gents. Jonathan Noble of Autosport writes, the revelation that the FIA has moved to clamp down on a potential ride height parc fermé trick has added to an intriguing twist in the Formula One title battle. Why is it so intriguing then? Well, everybody likes a salacious story, particularly in F1. Lest we forget Spygate, lest we forget Liegate, lest we forget double diffuser, lest we forget the blown off exhaust that Sebastian Vettel leveraged through 2010 and 2013. It's always been this way. And you'll recall that the FIA doesn't tend to release TDs, technical directives, just for gusto. It happens because somebody is doing something. A regulation clarification like this will happen because they will have new information that one of those teams up and down the grid is leveraging, exploring the grey areas of the rules and regulations. Ross Brawn, for the avoidance of doubt, one of the greatest F1 minds to have ever grated always said you read the rules once to understand what they say, and then you comb through them again to understand what they do not, so that you can exploit those grey areas. Autosport continues. While the governing body's response to suspicions that one competitor may have been altering front bib clearance between quali and the race during Parc Fermé regulations, and that they should stamp out the practice from now. The issue is unlikely, however, to go away immediately. Why? Because people want to know how much points were accrued using this. It will never come out. FIA are critically, acutely aware of how bad the optics are, how bad this could be for PR going forward. Supposing Lando Norris wins the championship and then we find out that McLaren were doing one of these, or even had a fiddle break. Cheating isn't cozy bedfellows with good PR. Is it? An F1, Liberty Media are overly hyped, overly focused, zoned in on optics. Indeed, they want it to be squeaky clean. Why? Because commercial value is all that matters, right? They've just struck up a new deal with LV, Louis Vuitton, Hennessy, Moet, or whatever their name is, and those type of brands won't want to be associated with a sport as dirty as the one that F's is beneath the surface. The big question asked Jonathan Noble of Autosport is being asked by some of the squads in private as to whether or not the damage has already been done and someone has already got away with doing something that they believe was clearly outside the regulations. I say that to say how many points in this championship has said team accrued using this dodgy bib trick, so-called. It is important, continues Noble, to state first, at the moment there is no proof, and again this varies. This is why the nuance of these different articles that I'm referring to and citing is really, really important, because Jonathan Noble of Autosport says at the moment, as at the time of writing, it's important to note that there is no evidence, that there is no smoking gun pointing at a Red Bull Racing or a McLaren per se. But if we're leveraging common sense as an example, who do you think would have done this? McLaren have looked rapid, super quick, using the bloody mini DRS and flexi wing at the front as well. Do you know what I mean? That flexi wing of Lando Norris around Monza, that pole lap, you can see it coming up like this. It looks like one of those bloody dinosaurs with the mane. Listen, these guys are using something. They're quick. I wondered in real time why Charles Leclerc couldn't get round Oscar Piastri, and then after the fact you see the wing do one of these mini DRS settings. No wonder Charles Leclerc couldn't overtake Oscar Piastri on that straight. So how many points, whoever is the culprit, if indeed there is one, how many points season to date have they gained by virtue of this trick? Throw into that the fiddle break as well. It takes some unpicking this if you're going to go down this very deep regulatory capture rabbit hole now. Jonathan Noble continues, the FIA has been explicit that it has not received any indication. Of course, they're never going to say this. They'll never tell us. Why would they tell us? Optics is all that matters. Apex predator settings. The FIA has also been explicit in saying that it has not received any indication of any team employing such a system. Behave yourself. You remember option 13, 1994, Michael Schumacher's Benetton. That's what they said then. Even though Ayrton Senna jumped out the car and was convinced that he could hear Michael Schumacher's Benetton deploying traction control in real time. They didn't tell us that then, and they wouldn't tell us that now. Benetton engineers have come out and since said that they were using something, not quite traction control, but something very similar. But again, the FIA realise on which side their bread is buttered. It makes no sense for them to come out and do a mea culpa. Somebody on the grid was cheating. Oh no, they will cover it up, just as they did with Ferrari fuel flow gate so many moons ago. Settlements all done in the background, away from the gaze of the public. Oh, the humanity. Noble continues, but the feelings on the matter could become heightened if from this weekend's US Grand Prix there is a notable step change in the pecking order and one or more teams suddenly fall away. Oh, the humanity. This could get techie this weekend, just like it did with the accusations of fiddle break, because people said post the summer break and the issuance of the technical directive around this torque steer or inertial valve or fiddle brake, whichever name you want to use, that if one of the teams falls away as far as its form post the summer break, then you know by extension, by default almost, which one of those were being accused of using this fiddle brake. Now, supposing we get to the USA Grand Prix and all of a sudden McLaren looks slow, Bob's your uncle. There is your answer, right? The prosecution rests no further questions, Your Honour. Jonathan Noble continues, in a rules area where the ride height is absolutely critical to car performance, and teams have long had to battle the compromises between setting a car up for qualifying and the race. The ability to alter the front bib between Saturday and Sunday, qualifying and race day, will be quite a powerful tool to help with that. Lest we forget, in this ground effect era, you want to get as close to the ground as possible. Why? Because that seals. In the first instant of ground effect car, they had skirts, right, completely sealed up the underfloor. That way, you make sure that everything going underneath the car is super clean. Ergo, giving the car in real time more downforce. You'd have seen the Sperling, similar thing, right, but just operated via fan stuff underneath the car, crazy levels of downforce. This is the same thing. So ergo, I say all that to say this, the closer that these cars can get to the floor, sans porpoising and bouncing, the better they will be, the faster they will be in the turns, particularly the medium to high speed ones. And that's why this bib trick, of which Autosport, the race and Eric Van Haren talk, would be absolute gold. Here would be the advantages. Potentially altering, says Jonathan Noble of Autosport, potentially altering the bib clearance would help account for the shift in car weight between qualifying and the race, as there is a significant difference in ride height and ride quality between empty fuel tank for quali and it being full for the race. Here's what he means by that. Look, if you're lighter in quali, then ideally completely discount the race, right? You'd want to run the car super low. However, you can't do that. It would make sense if you could change that via a bib or whatever settings, whatever trickery you want to use between qualifying on the race. Why? Because if you run the car super low in quali and then it's the same ride height for the race with a fuel tank of fuel, heavier car, then you're going to have issues as far as the skid plank, right? You're going to wear that away, and there are rules and regs around that. That's why you saw George Russell get disqualified, or George Russell was underweight, to be fair. Lewis Hamilton this time last year at COTA got disqualified for excessive plank wear. And again, if you're running the car too low, that's what happens. You'll recall that Red Bull a couple of years ago at Spa-Francorchamps were concerned about excessive plank wear undergoing the compression fueled section of the racetrack through Radillon and Eau Rouge. So they backed off. Came off the accelerator pedal, didn't they? That was the instruction they gave to both Max Verstappen and Checo Perez, with a view not to break the rules and end up disqualified. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is that. If you imagine you can run the car super low in qualifying and then jack it up to account for the extra weight via fuel that you're going to have to absorb and manage in the race, Bob's your uncle. Put yourself on pole and you're gone clear. It's a proper genius thing, this. And again, you wouldn't expect anything else from the weird and wacky minds that hold the red pen in Formula One. Having bib clearance and the perfect ride height for both scenarios would give an immediate advantage, says Jonathan Noble of Autosport, in terms of being able to take more curb in qualifying, as there would be no fear of damaging the floor and the plank, the skid plank that can't wear more than, it's like 10 milli, is it 10 millimeters, 1 millimeter? I always forget. Whatever, less than whatever got Lewis Hamilton disqualified and Charles Leclerc disqualified at this very fixture this time last year. It would also ensure that the aero platform was optimized as far as possible, which would then have tangible benefits of helping ensure the tyres are in the right operating windows. So it gets more, the stakes are even higher. You know how important bringing the tyres into their optimal temperature window are. Why? Because they're sensitive. If you fudge up the preparation of these tyres, if you take too much life out of them too quickly, trying to do a quick outlap as an example, that's your whole stint done. You can't unwind for that. There's no getting it back. Say you flat spot the tyre, got to do the whole stint on flat spotted tyres, and so therefore you will lose time across the whole stint. This stuff is genius and it's important. Looking after the tyres as far as the pressures is also key. Another advantage, Jonathan Noble writes, there could be help too in all of this, allowing a team to run much closer to the optimum minimum tyre pressures even, without having to sacrifice ride quality through suspension settings. Oh, the humanity. Do you want to talk about any more advantages? Noble continues, if you cannot change the bib height as the regulation states, then teams have to find the best compromise between their ride heights and angles for qualifying and the race. This is techie, isn't it? You can't optimize for both. You've got to take the line of best fit between qualifying setup and the race. You give something up in quali, therefore, to make sure that you're fast in the race. This bib trick, this ride height trick, would make it such that you didn't need to do that. There is lap time in this, and so therefore race and championship victories potentially. Oh, the humanity, going as low as they dare, Noble continues, for both low and high fuel without risking going too far and damaging the plank with a view to get disqualified. Mate, this is techie. How I cannot wait. Already I was properly enthused for this race at Kota. I couldn't be more so though now. I want to compare the market the before and after to see who's quicker relatively to the rest and who's lost speed, because there is speed and lap time in this. This is why it's so techie. Eric Van Haren. In fact, let me read out Hughesy of the race first. So Mark Hughes, legend of F1 journalism, writes thus on therace.com. Formula One paddock is bursting with rumour surrounding, and again, this is all rumour and speculation, allegedly settings. I preface everything I'm about to say with that. Hughes continues, the Formula One paddock is bursting with rumour surrounding one team allegedly using a cockpit activated device which can change the height of the leading edge of the floor, the bib or the T-tray between qualifying and the race, prompting immediate FIA action that was first reported by Autosport on a Wednesday. How do you like your Formula One? Imagine Lando or Max in the car activating this in real time. This is bonkers. This is proper tax avoidance settings again, and again reminiscent of option 13 back in Michael Schumacher's day. It feels and looks and smells the same way. Launch control, and again this was the era where launch control and traction control were banned, meant to be manual. The emphasis was on the drivers back in 1994 in Schumacher's Benetton days. And they found a way around it, right? As F1, the greatest F1 minds will always do. A cockpit activated device, reminiscent of Michael Schumacher, option 13. And again, when you there's lessons to be learned from option 13 as well, right? Because nobody could ever verify beyond reasonable doubt whether they were ever using it. Now, absolutely, there was an option 13 on Michael Schumacher's Benetton. But if you're going to prosecute these guys to use the criminal legislature, the criminal terminology even, then you need evidence. And they never had evidence back in 1994. And I think this is where it might get techie today, if past his prologue. Mark Hughes shares his understanding of what's happened behind the scenes and the benefits of using such a device. Get ready to get techie, ladies and gents. Mark Hughes says, any adjustment of the front bib clearance during Part 4A conditions is strictly prohibited by the FIA regulations. Read an FIA statement surrounding, so FIA made the statement, read an FIA statement surrounding the story which has developed ahead of this weekend's United States Grand Prix. Oh, the humanity. While we have not received any indication of any team employing such a system, the FIA remains vigilant in our ongoing efforts to enhance the policing of the sport. Behave yourself, the FIA. What are you talking about? Vigilant. They would even know vigilance if you saw it, FIA. This body, as far as a regulatory body, suffers from regulatory capture like no other. They understand on which side their bread is buttered because they provide a service to the tune of $40 million US dollars each and every single year to F1. This could never get out. It will go away. We will never hear more of this than the FIA and Liberty Media want us to. But again, Piranha's tank settings. This is F1, right? The epitome of. Mark Hughes continues. As part of this, we've implemented, this is the FI still talking, we've implemented procedural adjustments to ensure that front bib clearance cannot be easily modified. In some cases, this may involve the application of a seal to provide further assurance of compliance. What? Rorschach, what are we doing here? So are they going to put their papering over this button so nobody can touch or use it, mate? Techie. How do you like your F1? Look, following a tip from a rival. Go on, here's Mark Hughes talking now. Following a tip from a rival, it is believed that the team concerned, maybe Red Bull, maybe McLaren, maybe somebody else, was reminded after qualifying in Singapore last month that changing the clearance of the bib was prohibited, strictly prohibited by Parc Fermé regulations, and that for that race, the team Singapore complied with the requirement to maintain settings used in qualifying. Marquez continues, in theory, being able to adjust for the height of the floor's leading edge would allow you to derive maximum aerodynamic performance from running the floor low in qualifying, lower than you'd be able to run it in the race, because then the car is too heavy and you'll be on the downside of excessive plank wear and a disqualification. Raising the floor for the race would not only allow for the increased weight of the car when fueled up, but you could also avoid wearing out the underbody plank beyond the permitted 10% thickness. There you go. Mark Hughes telling you the truth. You'd run the car super low in qualifying, press your little button, it would jack up, and then you'd put your fuel in. That's what they'd be doing if indeed, as alleged, one of the teams on the grid is using it. But wouldn't it be good if a journo would put a name on it? Tell us whether it's Red Bull or McLaren. So you can come bear with me. If forced to run a lower ride height than ideal for the race, the driver would need to take care not to ground out the car over bumps and not be so aggressive with curbing. That's Mark Hughes of the race talking. Eric Van Haren, and for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 journalists and publications are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. Eric Van Haren of the Telegraph writes as follows. And again, cheeky translation, Dutch publication, yeah. Here's what he had to say. Red Bull has been accused by other teams of tinkering with the ride height. Motorsport Federation, FIA, intervenes. They will be conducting stricter checks in Austin from this weekend to prevent a possible trick to adjust the ride height of the car between qualifying and race sessions. Various teams, says Eric Van Haren, have pointed this out to the association, the federation, the FIA, as several sources in the paddock have confirmed. They've been pointing the finger at Red Bull Racing. Oh, the humanity. Such an adjustment between quali and race day is not allowed, and suspicions about Red Bull, the balls that are red, from certain teams emerged in several technical meetings. Red Bull denies the accusations, however, and points out that such system designs are all uploaded to a Motorsport Federation server, which all teams have access to. So they should know this, right? If Red Bull Racing were doing it, the audit process should give rise to that. But listen, this is the FIA, Regulatory Capture 101. I don't trust them. I don't trust them. Why would you ever trust them? Fuel flow gate, X-Wing, double diffuser. When were they ever trustworthy in the past? Ultimately, you know what? Their mission is difficult. These F1 minds are brilliant. Listen to this dude in Benetton who gave an interview to Driver 61. You're never going to give up. As soon as they ban traction control and launch control, the dude said that you're never going to give that up. You're going to look for a way to circumvent the rules and the regulation. Because why? Because this is the one that F's. Eric Van Haren continued, the team could use, whichever team they're accusing him of, he says it's Red Bull Racing, that the team could use a trick in the system to ensure that the ride height of the car can be adjusted under Parc Fermé's conditions. So, for example, between qualifying and the race, when no further adjustments are allowed. This concerns the front of the floor and the chassis, also called the bib or T-tray, according to an initial report by Autosport, mate. You can't legislate for this. And finally, by Eric Van Haren, he says, no evidence, however, for any Red Bull trick has been uncovered. When asked, the FIA states that there's been no evidence of a possible trick, but they will continue to carry out stricter checks as of the USA Grand Prix this weekend. Any adjustment to the ride height via the bib in park firm may strictly prohibited. While we have no indication of any such team using any such system, the FIA remains vigilant, blah, blah, blah. The FIA shouldn't even use the word vigilant, I'll be honest with you. Can't cope with it, Rosha. JSAT, not surprising. What's an embarrassing? It's techie. We'll see more this weekend. The proof will be in the pudding this weekend as far as a compare and contrast. This is variant settings when I put on my accounting app again. Who will be quicker? Who will be slower? That will give us all the information that we need to know, right? And even then, it will never ever be categoric. Why? Because the FIA will never come out and tell us. They didn't tell us about Ferrari fuel flow gate. They still haven't told us what the settlement in their balance sheet and P&L that they reported last year, what that attributes to. Why have they got these multi-millions, I want to say $8 million US in their balance sheet P&L as a settlement agreement? What's that for, FIA? Well, it's for them keeping their mouth shut, and they will keep their mouth shut again. It's incumbent. The onus even is on us as Formula One fans to go away and do our due diligence, to audit for what we see in real time, to connect the common sense F1 dots. Even that does mean, even if that does mean us leaning into apophenia ever so slightly. Because why? Because the FIA are the FIA, regulatory capture central, and they are incentivized to maintain their existing working relationship for whatever that's worth with Formula One and Liberty Media. They are providing them a service. Regulatory body, independent, transparent, they are not. Ladies and gents, let's see how this plays out at COTA this weekend. But I digress.